Hey math kids, I wanted to add another part to this video to show you how to graph vertex form by hand instead of just using Desmos. And here we go. So we're going to start with y equals 3x squared plus 12x plus 7. Oh, also, I don't think I showed in the other video what to do when we have a 3 out in front, so I'll cover that as well in this video. So we're going to go through the completing the square, so turn this into a 0, minus 7 from both sides. If you're a little rusty on completing the square, then make sure you watch the video that goes over that in a little bit slower detail. Now we're going to divide everything by 3. So we get negative 7/3 equals x squared plus 4x. We do the L step. So we divide by 2. We square. So we add 4 to both sides. The 4, because we want a common denominator, I'm going to think of it as 12/3 instead. So we have 12 minus 7, which gives us 5/3. And then when we look right here, we do our magic step, and we end up with x, use the elbow, plus 2. So that's our completing the square. Now to get it in vertex form, I'm going to move this over here onto the other side. So we minus 5/3 minus 5/3, and so we end up with 0 equals x plus 2 squared minus 5/3. Now, one final step that you need to do with vertex form is look at the original a term, so in this case 3, and we want to multiply both pieces by 3. So what's going to happen right here is we just get 3x plus 2 squared. We don't have to do any multiplication, and I'm actually going to change that 0 back to a y. Now right here we have the 3 and the 3 that cancel, and we're left with a negative 5, and so this would be our vertex form. And if we want to graph that, so I'm going to just move this over here so we can still see that. If we want to graph that, we can start with the vertex. So we do this. And the vertex, remember, we change the sign right here, so negative 2, and then we keep the sign here, negative 5. So we go negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we draw a dot right there. Now, depending on how much detail we need, we're going to take this 3 into account. So what I like to do is I'm going to use the fact that our vertex is symmetric, or our parabola is symmetric about the vertex. So once we draw our parabola, it's going to be symmetric about that line right there. And so I'm going to just find the x-intercept. I'm going to plug in a 0 for x right here. We have 3, 0 plus 2 squared minus 5. So that's just going to be a 2 in there. So we have 2 squared, which is 4. So we have 3 times 4 minus 5. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. And so we're going to have an x-intercept at 7. So 1, or let's see, 0 for x, yeah, a y-intercept. So we're going to get plug in 0 for x, and so we get the y-intercept is 7. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And since that's over 2 from here, the other one, if we moved over 2 from the vertex, we would have, it would mirror right there. So we have this skinny parabola that looks like that. Okay? Let's try one more. So we have 2x squared minus 4x plus 3. is equal to y. So we complete the square. We set y equal to 0. We subtract 3 from both sides. We get negative 3 equals 2x squared minus 4x. Divide everything by the leading coefficient. Divide by 2. So we have negative 3 halves equals x squared minus 2x. We do the L step. Negative 1, we cut it in half, and then we square that. It's a positive 1. Add 1. And I'm going to add 1 over here, but I'm going to think of it as a 2 over 2 because I want my common denominator. 2 minus 3 is negative 1, so we get negative 1 half equals x, and then the elbow step minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to take this and transfer it up here so I have some room to deal with it. Okay, I'm going to add 1/2 to both sides. So we get 0 is equal to x minus 1 squared plus 1/2. Then we have to do that final step where we multiply everything by the leading coefficient from the original. So I multiply by 2. 1/2 times 2 is 1. X minus 1 with a 2 out in front. And I'm going to change my 0 back to a y. So that's my vertex form. Then I'm going to move over here and, whoops, not that far, draw a graph. So I'm going to first plot my vertex, which is going to be at 1, 1, because we change the sign here, keep the sign here. So we do 1, 1 like that. Once again, we're going to be symmetric about this point. I'll find the y-intercept. I think I misspoke in the other one. I did it right on the graph, but when we plug in a 0 for x, we get the y-intercept. So I plug in a 0 right here, so that's negative 1 when we do 0 minus 1. And then negative 1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2, and then 2 plus 1 is 3. So we're going to cross the y-axis at 3. We had to move over 1 in the left, so we're going to move over 1 to the right. Mirror that. Draw the parabola. Should go through right there. There we go. And that's our new parabola. So if you need additional help with this, come to Math Lab. But until then, calculator.